Ambassador Sarah Chun stared at the communication device in her trembling hands, watching her daughter's final moments replay for the 7th time. 8-year-old Emma had been visiting the Centauri educational exchange when the Galactic Council's enforcement action began. The official report called it a regrettable miscalculation. During pest control operations, Emma had been learning to paint alien sunsets when the orbital bombardment turned her school into glass. 3 weeks had passed since the funeral on Earth, 3 weeks since the Galactic Council delivered their formal apology. With all the sincerity of a corporate lawsuit settlement, Ambassador Chung had followed diplomatic protocol, filed the proper grievances, and accepted the Council's offer of appropriate compensation, a sum that couldn't buy a child's bicycle on Earth, but apparently represented significant value in galactic credits. The Council thought the matter closed. They were wrong. Chun looked up from her personal quarters aboard the orbital station as her aide knocked. "Ma'am, there's been a development." "What kind of development, Marcus?" "A single-person transport just cleared Earth's planetary defense grid." "Military designation." "The pilot requested immediate docking with our diplomatic vessel." Chun frowned. Earth's government had been unusually quiet since Emma's death. Too quiet. Did they identify themselves? "Yes, ma'am. United States Marine Corps, Gunnery Sergeant Jake Morrison, reporting for diplomatic escort duty." Chun had been a diplomat for 15 years. She knew when governments were planning something they couldn't officially acknowledge. Diplomatic escort duty wasn't a real assignment. Marines didn't escort diplomats. Unless someone expected trouble, she walked to her office viewport and watched the small transport approach. It was sleek, black, and moved with the kind of precision that suggested military automation. As it docked, she noticed something unusual. The transport bore no visible weapons, no external armor plating, nothing that would violate the Council's strict regulations about human military presence in neutral space. 30 minutes later, Gunnery Sergeant Morrison stood at attention in her office. He was exactly what central casting would order for intimidating Marine. 6 feet 3 inches of regulated muscle, steel gray eyes, and the kind of facial expression that suggested he'd seen too much and forgotten nothing. His uniform was immaculate, his bearing perfect, and Chen couldn't shake the feeling that he was the most dangerous person she'd ever shared oxygen with. "At ease, Sergeant," she said. "Though I have to admit I'm confused about your assignment here." Morrison relaxed into a stance that still looked ready for action. "Ma'am, I'm here to ensure your safety during ongoing diplomatic negotiations." "What ongoing negotiations?" "The Council considers the matter settled." "Yes, ma'am. That's why I'm here." Chun studied his face. Marines were trained to follow orders, not to think creatively about international incidents. But something in Morrison's eyes suggested this particular Marine might be different. "Sergeant, can I ask about your background?" "Certainly, ma'am." "Enlisted 12 years ago. Served 2 tours with Marine Special Operations Command. Deployed to the Proxima Incident, the Vegan Trade War, and the first human contact protocols on Kepler 442b. Currently assigned to Diplomatic Security Division." Diplomatic Security Division? Chun had never heard of that unit. "Recently created, ma'am. Very small unit. Very specific mission parameters." Chun was beginning to understand. Someone in Earth's government had created a new unit with a very specific purpose, and that purpose had to do with Emma's death. "What are your orders, Sergeant?" "To accompany you to all diplomatic functions, ensure your safety, and observe Galactic Council procedures for potential improvements in human-alien relations." The way he said improvements made Chun's spine tingle. "And if the Council objects to your presence?" "They won't, ma'am. I'm unarmed, unaugmented, and according to my diplomatic credentials, I'm just a bodyguard. The Council's own regulations allow for personal security during diplomatic functions." Chun pulled up the relevant treaties on her desk display. Morrison was right, the regulations did allow for personal security. But they also specified that such security personnel must be non-threatening to council interests, and incapable of disrupting normal station operations. Sergeant, forgive me for asking, but what exactly can one unarmed human do if the situation becomes complicated? Morrison's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Ma'am, I've read your daughter's file. 8 years old. Loved to paint. Wanted to be a xenobiologist when she grew up. Smart kid. Yes, she was. The thing about Marines, ma'am, is that we remember things. We remember who our friends are. We remember who protects the innocent. And we remember who kills children. June felt a chill. Sergeant, I hope you're not suggesting— I'm not suggesting anything, ma'am. I'm just here to observe diplomatic procedures and ensure your safety. That's all. But Jean had been around military personnel long enough to read between the lines. Morrison wasn't here to observe diplomatic procedures. He was here to study them, to learn how the council operated, to identify weaknesses. And judging by his calm confidence, he already had a plan. 3 days later, they received an invitation to a council reception aboard the primary diplomatic station. Chiun had dreaded returning to the place where she'd first learned of Emma's death, but she couldn't refuse without creating a diplomatic incident. The council station was a marvel of engineering, a massive ring structure that rotated to provide gravity, with sections specifically designed for each member species. The human section was small but comfortable, with Earth-normal atmosphere and gravity. The council chambers were neutral territory, carefully designed to accommodate all member species, without favoring any particular environmental preference. Chun and Morrison arrived via diplomatic shuttle, passing through the standard security screening. The scanners confirmed what Morrison had claimed. He carried no weapons, no threatening technology, nothing that violated council regulations. He was, according to the scanners, exactly what he appeared to be, a large human in a military uniform, carrying nothing more dangerous than a standard personal communicator. The reception hall was impressive, filled with representatives from dozens of species. Chiun recognized most of them, the crystalline alterines who communicated through harmonic resonance, the insectoid draconians who had dominated galactic trade for centuries, the energy-being ethereals who barely maintained physical form. At the center of it all were the 5 council archons, the individuals who actually made the decisions that affected trillions of lives across known space. Archon Zixtar, the draconian trade representative, approached them first. Ambassador Shun, we are pleased to see you have recovered from your recent loss. Chun forced a diplomatic smile. Thank you for your concern, Archon. And who is your companion? This is Gunnery Sergeant Morrison, my personal security detail. Zixtar's compound eyes examined Morrison with the calculating gaze of a predator evaluating potential threat. Impressive physical specimen. I assume he has been cleared through proper channels? Completely cleared, Chun confirmed. All regulations have been followed precisely. What Chin didn't mention was that Morrison had been cleared because he technically posed no threat that the council could detect. He carried no weapons because he didn't need them. He wasn't augmented because human baseline capabilities were already beyond what most species considered possible. Over the next hour, Chun made the required diplomatic rounds while Morrison stood quietly nearby. To casual observation, he was simply an attentive bodyguard. But Chien noticed him studying everything: the security procedures, the guard rotations, the communication protocols, the physical layout of the station. He wasn't just observing, he was memorizing. During a lull in the conversation, Archon Veltar approached them. Veltar was an ethereal, one of the energy beings who had founded the council millennia ago. Speaking with Veltar always made Chun uncomfortable because the creature communicated through direct neural interface rather than words. Ambassador Chun. Veltar's thoughts projected directly into her mind. We sense unusual patterns in your companion's neural activity. Chun glanced at Morrison, who showed no sign of having heard the telepathic communication. I'm sorry? Your security specialist. His thought patterns are ... structured, methodical. We detect extensive tactical analysis in progress. He's trained for security assessment, Chun replied carefully. That's his job. Indeed. We simply find it curious that Earth would send such a focused individual for simple diplomatic escort duty. Morrison finally spoke. Archon Veltar, if I may? Veltar's energy form flickered with surprise. Most humans couldn't detect ethereal telepathic communication unless it was directed at them specifically. I'm trained to assess potential threats to Ambassador Chun's safety, Morrison continued. That requires understanding the environment, the security procedures, and the capabilities of everyone present. If my attention to detail concerns you, I can assure you it's purely professional. Your attention to detail is quite thorough, Sergeant Morrison. Thank you, sir. I take my responsibilities seriously. Veltar's form pulsed with what Chien had learned to recognize as amusement. We are certain you do. Tell us, what is your assessment of station security? Morrison's expression. The Council's response came faster than Chun had expected. Within 6 hours of their meeting, station security was increased by 400%. All human personnel were confined to designated areas, and Morrison was ordered to submit to continuous monitoring for the safety of all station personnel. Morrison accepted the monitoring with cheerful cooperation, which made Chun deeply nervous. Sergeant, they've essentially put us under house arrest. Doesn't this interfere with your mission? Morrison was calmly reviewing technical manuals on his data tablet, while 3 separate monitoring devices tracked his every movement. Not particularly, ma'am. I expected this response. Then how do you plan to complete your educational program? The monitoring is actually helpful, ma'am. It ensures the Council will have a complete record of everything that happens next. June felt ice forming in her stomach. What's going to happen next? Before Morrison could answer, her communications console activated with an emergency priority message from Archon Veltar. Ambassador Chun, report to Emergency Conference Room 7 immediately. Come alone. Morrison stood as Chin prepared to leave. Sergeant, they specifically said alone. Yes, ma'am. I'll be monitoring from here. He tapped his communicator. I'll know if you need assistance. Chen found the 5 Archons waiting in a heavily shielded conference room designed for the most sensitive council discussions. The atmosphere was thick with tension and something that might have been fear. Ambassador Chun, Zixstar began without preamble. We need to discuss your government's intentions. I've been very clear about our intentions, Archon. We want justice for my daughter's death. Your Sergeant Morrison is not here for justice, Veltar projected urgently. We have analyzed his behavioral patterns, his technical inquiries, and his responses to our security measures. He is here to conduct a military operation. Chun chose her words carefully. Sergeant Morrison is here to ensure that those responsible for Emma's death are held accountable. Through assassination, Kreck's volume harmonized, through justice. Zixstar leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the room's harsh lighting. Ambassador, we will be direct. We know your Marine has been gathering intelligence for a precision strike. We know he has capabilities far beyond what he has revealed. We know Earth has sent him here to kill Council personnel. And we are prepared to offer a compromise. Chun raised an eyebrow. What kind of compromise? Veltar's energy form pulsed rapidly. The individuals directly responsible for the authorization of the orbital bombardment. We will turn them over to human justice in exchange for calling off your military operation. Chun felt a moment of genuine surprise. You're willing to sacrifice your own people? The individuals in question exceeded their authority, Zixstar explained. The bombardment was not authorized by the full council. It was ordered by a rogue faction within the Draconian Trade Authority who believed they could resolve a minor contract dispute through intimidation. So, you're saying Emma's death was illegal even under council law? Correct. The responsible parties have been under investigation since the incident occurred. Chun stared at the 5 most powerful beings in known space and realized they were terrified. Not of Earth's military, not of diplomatic consequences. They were terrified of one human Marine who had spent a week studying their security procedures. Who were the responsible parties? Veltar transmitted a data packet containing 3 files. Chun recognized the names all Draconian Trade Authority officials, all involved in the original contract negotiation that had led to the bombardment. These three individuals ordered the bombardment without council approval. They are currently in custody pending formal charges. Chun studied the files while calculating her next move. And what exactly are you proposing? We transfer these individuals to Earth custody immediately. Your government handles their punishment. Your Marine returns to Earth. The incident is considered resolved. It was a reasonable offer. It was exactly what any normal diplomatic negotiation would produce. The problem was that Chun was beginning to understand that this wasn't a normal diplomatic negotiation anymore. I need to consult with Sergeant Morrison about security arrangements for prisoner transfer. That will not be necessary, Zixtar said quickly. We can handle all transfer procedures through standard diplomatic channels. I'm afraid I have to insist. Sergeant Morrison is responsible for my safety, and prisoner transfers can be dangerous operations. Before the Archons could object, Chun activated her communicator. Sergeant Morrison, please report to Emergency Conference Room 7. We need to discuss security arrangements. On my way. Ma'am, Morrison arrived within minutes. Somehow having navigated the station's enhanced security without triggering any alerts, the monitoring devices that had been tracking him were nowhere to be seen. Ma'am, you requested security consultation? Yes, Sergeant. The Council is proposing to transfer the individuals responsible for Emma's death to Earth custody. I need your assessment of the security requirements. Morrison listened carefully as Chun explained the Council's offer. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Ma'am, that's a very generous offer from the Council. Do you think it's acceptable? Morrison looked directly at each Archon in turn. Sir, I appreciate the Council's willingness to cooperate with human justice. However, I have some concerns about the proposed arrangement. What concerns? Veltar projected nervously. First, I need to verify that these three individuals actually have the authority to order orbital bombardments. Second, I need to confirm that they acted without Council oversight. Third, I need to establish a clear chain of evidence showing their direct responsibility for Emma Chun's death. Zixtar's mandibles clicked with agitation. We have provided complete documentation. Sir, with respect, I'm sure your documentation is thorough. But human justice requires very specific standards of evidence. I'll need to interview the responsible parties directly. That is not acceptable. Morrison's expression remained politely professional. Sir, I understand your position. However, Ambassador Chun's safety requires that I verify the accuracy of any prisoner transfer arrangements. If these individuals are not actually responsible for the bombing, then the real perpetrators are still at large and represent a continued threat. Chun watched the Archons exchange increasingly frantic communications. They were trapped by their own offer. If they refused to allow Morrison to verify the prisoner's guilt, they'd be admitting that their evidence was incomplete. If they allowed him access to the prisoners, they'd be giving him exactly what he needed to complete his mission. Very well, Veltar projected reluctantly. You may interview the prisoners. Under supervision. With full monitoring. Of course, sir. I wouldn't have it any other way. 2 hours later, Chun and Morrison were escorted to the high-security detention level of the station. The area was designed to hold the most dangerous criminals in Council space, with energy barriers, stasis fields, and monitoring systems that could track individual atoms. The three Draconian prisoners were held in separate cells, each one surrounded by enough security to stop a small army. As they approached the first cell, Morrison activated his personal recorder. For the record, this is Gunnery Sergeant Jake Morrison conducting prisoner interview in connection with the death of Emma Chun. Present are Ambassador Sarah, Chun, and Council security personnel. The first prisoner, Trade Authority Director Vexihan, was a particularly large Draconian whose compound eyes tracked Morrison with undisguised hatred. Through the energy barrier, his translated voice was full of contempt. Human scum. You think your primitive species can threaten the Trade Authority? Morrison's response was calm and professional. Sir, I'm here to verify your involvement in the bombardment of the Centauri Educational Exchange. Can you confirm that you authorized the orbital strike? I authorized the elimination of a pest infestation. The presence of your larva was incidental. Chun felt her hands clench into fists, but Morrison's expression never changed. Sir, are you stating for the record that you ordered the bombardment knowing that human children were present at the target location? I ordered the bombardment because human children were present. Your species needs to learn that contracts with the Trade Authority are not optional. Morrison made a note on his recorder. Thank you for that clarification, sir. The second prisoner was equally forthcoming about his role, apparently believing that council custody would protect him from human justice. The third prisoner actually laughed when Morrison asked about civilian casualties. Human Morrison, the prisoner hissed, your species is barely evolved past stone tools. Do you think we fear your primitive justice? Morrison finished his recording and turned to the council security chief. Thank you for facilitating these interviews. I have what I need. As they walked away from the detention area, Chun asked quietly, Did you get what you came for? Full confessions to the deliberate targeting of human civilians. Statements of intent to continue such actions. Clear evidence of personal responsibility. Morrison paused. And confirmation that they represent an ongoing threat to human lives. So the council's offer is acceptable? Morrison's smile was cold and precise. Ma'am, the council's offer assumes that justice means arrest, trial, and imprisonment, doesn't it? Not for war crimes against children. 2 days after the reception, Ambassador Chun received an unexpected communication from Archon Veltar requesting a private meeting. The Ethereal claimed there were irregularities in the previous incident reports that required clarification. Chun knew this was diplomatic language for, we're getting nervous and want to know what you're really doing here. Morrison accompanied her to the meeting, held in one of the station's neutral conference rooms. The space was designed to accommodate energy beings like Veltar while remaining comfortable for corporeal species. As they entered, Chun noticed Morrison's slight pause as he scanned the room's layout. Ambassador Chun. Veltar's thoughts projected into her mind as the Ethereal's energy form settled into a containment field that served as a chair. We appreciate your prompt response to our request. Of course, Archon. How can I assist you? Veltar's form pulsed slowly. We have been reviewing the incident involving your offspring. Certain details require clarification. Chun felt her jaw tighten. What kind of details? The timing of the enforcement action? The target selection protocols? The authorization chain? Veltar's energy fluctuated in patterns Chun had learned indicated discomfort. We have discovered discrepancies in the official reports. Morrison spoke for the first time since entering the room. What kind of discrepancies, sir? Veltar's attention shifted to the Marine. That is classified information, Sergeant. Sir? If these discrepancies affect Ambassador Chun's safety or the accuracy of the incident reports, I believe she has a right to know. Your concern for the ambassador's well-being is noted. However, council internal matters are not subject to human oversight. Morrison's expression didn't change, but Chun caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Of course, sir. I understand the council values its privacy. Something in Morrison's tone made Veltar's energy pattern spike sharply. You seem to find our procedures amusing, Sergeant. Not at all, sir. I find them ... educational. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Chen realized Morrison was doing something very dangerous. He was letting the Ethereal know that he wasn't intimidated. More than that, he was suggesting that he found the Council's security measures inadequate. Perhaps, Veltar projected, you could share your educational observations with us? Morrison glanced at Chun, who gave him a barely perceptible nod. Sir, I've noticed that Council security protocols are designed to prevent large-scale military actions. They're very effective against fleets, armies, and organized resistance movements, and they're not designed to handle individual threats. Your security assumes that any real danger will come in the form of massive force. So you've built defenses against massive force. You haven't really considered what one person could do if they understood your systems well enough. Veltar's form began fluctuating rapidly. Are you threatening the Council, Sergeant? No, sir. I'm making an observation about security theory. Large-scale defenses often have vulnerabilities to small-scale infiltration. It's a common problem in any security system. Chen realized what Morrison was doing. He wasn't threatening the Council directly. He was letting them know that he'd identified their vulnerabilities, that Earth understood their weaknesses, that the careful diplomatic protocols and massive space stations and energy being superiority wouldn't protect them from someone who thought differently about problems. Your observations are noted. Veltar projected coldly. However, we believe our security measures are more than adequate for any conceivable threat. Morrison nodded respectfully. I'm sure you're right, sir. The Council has thousands of years of experience in these matters. But Chun heard the unspoken addition. And humans have thousands of years of experience in warfare. The meeting ended shortly. Afterward, with Veltar promising to provide updated incident reports when appropriate. As they left the conference room, Chun noticed Morrison checking his personal communicator. Anything important, Sergeant? Update from Earth, ma'am. My deployment has been extended indefinitely. Chun felt a chill of anticipation. Extended for what purpose? Continuing diplomatic security operations, ma'am. And some additional duties that just came through. What kind of additional duties? Morrison's smile was cold enough to freeze helium. Cultural exchange programs, ma'am. That evening, Chen was reviewing incident reports in her quarters when Morrison requested permission to enter. She found him carrying a small case that definitely hadn't been part of his original equipment. Ma'am, I've received some materials from Earth that might interest you. Educational materials about human military history. Chun raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware you were qualified to teach military history, Sergeant. Recent additional certification, ma'am. Turns out the Diplomatic Security Division has a lot of educational resources available. He opened the case, revealing what appeared to be standard data tablets and projection equipment. But Sheen noticed the precision manufacturing, the lack of any identifying marks, and the way Morrison handled them suggested they were anything but standard. What kind of educational materials? Case studies, ma'am. Historical examples of how humans have resolved conflicts when diplomatic channels proved insufficient. Morrison activated one of the tablets, and a holographic display appeared showing various incidents throughout human history. For instance, the way Special Operations Forces have historically handled situations involving non-state actors who harm civilians. Chun stared at the display. The images showed surgical strikes, precision eliminations, and the kind of tactical operations that remove specific threats without collateral damage. And you think the Council needs to understand these historical precedents? Educational purposes only, ma'am. It's important for all species to understand how humans approach problems. Cultural exchange builds mutual understanding. Chen was beginning to realize that Morrison's educational materials were actually detailed operational plans. Earth hadn't just sent a Marine to observe. They'd sent a Marine to plan. And now they'd sent him the tools to execute those plans. Sergeant, hypothetically speaking, what would these historical precedents suggest about the current situation? Morrison studied the holographic display thoughtfully. Historically, ma'am, when non-state actors have harmed American civilians and refused to face justice through normal channels, the response has been highly targeted, extremely precise, and personally delivered. Personally delivered? Small unit operations, ma'am. Sometimes single operators. The idea is to demonstrate that distance, defenses, and political immunity don't protect those who target innocents. Shun felt her heart racing. And historically, how effective have these approaches been? Highly effective, ma'am. The operations tend to be so precise that they create minimal collateral damage while sending a very clear message about accountability. Chun stared at the tactical displays. Morrison, are you telling me that Earth has decided to handle this through military action? No, ma'am. Earth has decided to handle this through education. We're going to teach the Council about human approaches to justice. Hands-on learning experience. Before Chun could respond, her communications console chimed with an urgent message. It was from Archon Zixtar, requesting an immediate meeting regarding urgent security concerns. They know, Chun said. Morrison nodded. They're starting to understand that the diplomatic phase is ending. An hour later, Chen and Morrison stood in the Council's primary chamber facing all 5 Archons. The atmosphere was tense enough to cut with a blade. Archon Zixtar's compound eyes tracked Morrison's every movement while Veltar's energy form pulsed with agitation. Ambassador Chun. Zixtar spoke with the kind of controlled anger that suggested barely contained violence. We have received disturbing intelligence reports regarding your companion's activities. What kind of activities? Detailed reconnaissance of station security systems, analysis of guard rotations, mapping of critical infrastructure nodes, requests for technical specifications under the guise of safety inspections. Chun glanced at Morrison, who stood at perfect attention. Sergeant Morrison is responsible for my security. Naturally, he needs to understand the security environment. His activities exceed any reasonable security assessment, Veltar projected. We believe he is conducting pre-operational intelligence gathering. Morrison spoke calmly. Archons, I can assure you that all my activities have been within the bounds of standard diplomatic security protocols. I'm simply being thorough in my duties. Your thoroughness borders on espionage, Zixtar hissed. Sir, I'm not gathering intelligence for military purposes. I'm studying your security procedures to better understand how to keep Ambassador Chun safe within your systems. Archon Krex Volume, a silicon-based life form who rarely spoke, generated the harmonic tones that served as his species' language. The universal translator rendered his words, Human Morrison. Your study of our systems demonstrates capabilities that suggest specialized training beyond normal diplomatic security. Morrison nodded respectfully. That's correct, sir. I have specialized training in threat assessment, security analysis, and protection operations. And elimination operations? Veltar projected sharply. I'm trained in a variety of skills, sir. But I'm here purely in a diplomatic capacity. The Archons exchanged communications in their various languages. Chun caught.